Well, I love the energy that you were bringing.
All right, we gotta keep that energy going. Absolutely.
Small crowd, but a mighty crowd.
Right? We're just gonna blow it up.
Yes. Right? Well, thanks everybody for spending your pre-happy hour with us. As was mentioned, I'm Katelyn Kroneman, and I am with Snapchat. And I know you guys are all hearing a lot of news this week. Everybody's got something new to roll out. But in keeping with our theme, I'm going to be simplifying what Snap's news is. And that is we are finally allowing brands to advertise in the chat side of our platform.
Wow.
Ooh.
That's amazing. That is so amazing.
Right? Isn't that incredible? And it doesn't stop there. Also, on the Maps side.
All right, maps are cool. Like, you can do something really cool with that. I know we talked about this, but I was thinking about it earlier. I'm like, all right, that's really cool.
We're going to have to dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
But enough about us. We are here to talk about you and the incredible work that you've been doing. But before we actually get started, I do have a favor to ask from the audience. Mark is going to be sharing the stage this week with another panelist, Seal. Not just me, but he will be with Seal later this week, meaning the 4-time Grammy Award-winning musician, Seal.
And great human being.
And
Seal.
Fantastic human being. But what I need you to do is I need you all to bring the energy because we want this session to be your favorite of the week.
Of course.
And it will be, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Then, Mark, let's just jump right in. You have championed the saying, make simple special. But we live in a world that loves to overcomplicate. So how do you bring that theory of making simple special, but also delivering these bold campaigns? How do you do it?
Well, I think actually not complicating is actually a bold idea. Anyone that works in marketing or works in marketing services or whatever people do, everyone here takes good ideas and makes them more complicated, including myself. And I think at the core of, basically human behavior, marketing science, you can insert, thing here, is the simplicity of an idea. The simplicity of an idea and the kind of human insight behind it is what makes it work. And if you overcomplicate, it might look good creatively from an internal lens, but consumers don't get it. And for me personally, I've lived in different countries. I've been in different parts of the world. I've learned a lot about culture. And especially when you work in different parts of the world, you learn that the simpler the idea, the easier it's to execute, the easier it's to translate into other parts of the world. And I think that's one of the most disciplined things that a marketer can do is keep it simple. But what we sometimes forget is that we have to make it special, meaning we have to be distinctive, we have to be differentiated. Making simple special is something I've said to my team and I've talked about it in the past, but it's hard. Sometimes, you guys have probably heard the Mark Twain say this, I would have written you a shorter letter if I had more time. That's the point. Simplify your message, simplify your product idea, simplify your campaign. It will land even more importantly.
I love that. I do think we tend to overcomplicate and make things much harder for ourselves. One campaign that has really embraced that idea of simplification is the Pepsi Challenge. 2 cups, 1 question, and utter confidence in your product. I want to ask a quick poll from our lively crowd. How long do you think the Pepsi Challenge has been around? Dave Egan.
2 years.
No, wrong answer. Anybody else?
25, 4.
Okay, so all of you are wrong.
What's that? Someone said the right answer. There we go.
Very good. Since 1975, 50 years. A lot has changed in 50 years, but this challenge has remained relevant. What is it about this?
Look, I think the very nature, if you go back to 75, a guy named Roger Enrico simply wanted to just prove that our friends in Atlanta had a subpar product. He had a very simple idea, get people to try it. Basically, it's just trial. Let's be really clear. This is a trial mechanism. And we knew we had a good product, and we knew if we did something really simple 50 years ago, we could actually change perception. And it turned into a campaign. It turned into literally the thing that propelled the brand, in a very competitive marketplace from, let's say, 75 to 85 in particular. And I think what's interesting is that we kind of lost focus on it. And about 9 years ago, when I moved overseas, I decided I was going to bring it back for Europe. And we're low share. I mean, in this market in particular, we're a very low share brand. And so we started executing the challenge, and it worked the same way it worked in 1975. And so when I moved back to the U.S. and I took over CMO, I was like, guys, why are we overcomplicating this? We got a great product. We got a simple idea. I know agencies and others kind of don't want to repeat something someone else did, but that's the power in it. We've literally executed. We're focusing on only about 25, 30 cities. All experiential. We're surrounding it with social. We're actually doing billboards of results. We have not lost a single market. The average nationally is 66% of people. We're doing it with zero sugar. So Pepsi Zero Sugar beats our competition, zero sugar, 66% nationally. The highest is 76. And we even went to Atlanta on National Have a Coke Day, and we won 58%. Now, this is a market where our share is, you can imagine, pretty small. The simplicity of it, the engagement of it, the storytelling, and then we went and bought media and put billboards up to remind the city what we just did. So, that's what makes it fun. And I think that's the thing where, again, it's special because of how you do it. The what's pretty simple. It's the how that actually makes it really special.
I feel like that was the original taste test was the Pepsi
Absolutely.
Challenge,
Yeah.
right? And I love that you brought it down to Atlanta. It shows that the cola wars are alive and well. Which is a fun bit of the dynamic for the beverage category. And you guys have done some great job kind of reinvigorating that with your Food Deserves Pepsi campaign and your barbecue crashers, and also with your recent campaign of Share a Pepsi With. Can you talk to us a little bit about that new campaign?
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of Food Deserves Pepsi is, again, it doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound like, oh, wow, you're talking about having a soda with meals. The reality is over 60% of the occasions of soft drinks is with food. And if we spend our time talking about sports and music all the time and forget that 60% of the occasions are with food, you get lost. So we had this insight working with BBDO, and it's a very simple insight, that you're leaving taste on the table if you don't have Pepsi on the table. We know we have a great tasting product, and we've left this occasion, off. So we started it with an idea called Chase Cars, where we basically chased pizza delivery guys. And we faked some of it. Some of it was real. And we just reinforced the fact that if you're ordering a pizza, you should have a Pepsi. Then we did this thing called Undercover Cups, which my legal team didn't like. But if you go watch it, it was a lot of fun. We basically crashed a whole bunch of places that don't sell our product. We had some fun with some logos. And we told a really fun story. And then we've taken it to Barbecue Crashers, where we take every summer barbecue and we basically show up with Pepsi. And if you don't have Pepsi, well, we're going to show up. We make these guys in blue jumpsuits. We had some fun. But then, this summer, my good friends in Atlanta decided to bring back an amazing campaign. Now, the Share a Coke campaign is over a decade old. It's a simple idea. They started actually overseas before they even brought it to the U.S. But my principal idea was look, why do I want to share a Coke with a stranger when I can share it with a burger or a taco or this? So we just did something fun. We took over our logo. We made it burgers, tacos, et cetera. We bought a whole bunch of out-of-home media next to our friends. And we just had some fun with it. Now, there are some haters out there that have kind of said, oh, it's a ripoff and you're copying. It's okay. It's okay. Again, keeping it simple. The cola wars are just, it's fun. I've got great friends at my competition. They do great work. At the same time, we're a challenger brand. We're going to have some fun with it. And that's what it's all about. And we're focusing on the simple truth, which is food deserves Pepsi. And actually, there's more opportunity by being relevant in that occasion.
I love it. Well, you certainly have brought a lot of fun to the category. And I think if your legal team is worried about a campaign, that's sometimes a really good sign that this is going to be very effective, right? So you're doing a great job of that. And food and Pepsi is certainly a natural collaboration. But one that maybe isn't as predictable might be Seal and Mountain Dew. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what you guys will be discussing on your panels this week, and perhaps a little bit behind the thought of that campaign and how it came to be, because it ended up being one of the most talked about Super Bowl spots?
The most Googled video Super Bowl spot, the most YouTube search spot. It's pretty amazing. Look, the reality is Super Bowl is a tough place to break through. We all spend a lot of money. We try to people launch products there. That's really hard. Like ultimately, you want to stand out. You want to entertain. And Goodby, who's our agency, pitched an idea. It was just when I came back. And when you get an idea that you're laughing and smiling the entire time, you know it's good. Even if other people may not like it or they think it's weird, you know it's good. And so there was a meme that existed prior. Like there was literally someone had made Seal as a meme. Seal had seen it. His daughter sent it to him. And we didn't know that, but we just basically thought it was funny. The agency thought it was funny. It was kind of odd. It definitely was going to throw some people off. So net, they pitched it to us. We pitched it to our CEO, who we walked in the meeting, is like, why are we doing Super Bowl? I don't want to do Super Bowl. What do you guys? And then when he saw it, he's like, we're doing Super Bowl. And then I walked out of the meeting and I said, so what does Seal think of the idea? And I'm like, well, we haven't shared it with him yet. Ultimately, the best part about that idea is we had two goals. One is awareness for Baja Blast. Two, we wanted people to understand what it was, which is basically a lime-flavored soft drink. So this whole idea of Kiss from a Lime was born. Seal rewrote the track. More importantly, he made a dance mix. If you go to Spotify right now and look at the dance mix, it's hilarious. And it was a way for him to show his own creativity. It was a way for us to deliver on certain business objectives. And it just was a great opportunity to be breakthrough in the world's biggest stage, I guess. And it's fun. I think that you got to remember, whatever category you work in is, I make soft drinks for a living. I make sports drinks for a living. I make water for a living. You got to make it fun. And when you make Seal a Seal, there's nothing not fun about that.
It's hysterical. I loved watching it. And certainly, as you said, it was one of the most talked about, most viewed executions, which is hard to stand out, but you guys were able to do it. So that's a huge success.
We should have done a snap filter where we turned people into seals. I didn't even think of that. There's still time.
Let's do it. It isn't dead. People are still talking about it, especially after your panels this week. It's going to go viral. Let's bring that back. But you touched on something there around human-centric marketing and not forgetting that at the other end of this marketing campaign is your consumer and is a human. But we have almost too much data and information that we sometimes forget about the human on the other end of this. How do you keep that kind of human truth at the center of your campaigns?
Look, it's not easy. And I think, we all talk about it. We all talk about it in a way that is, I think we may have just won an award. That's funny. For this campaign.
This would be then your best campaign or your best panel ever. Somebody look it up.
Yeah, I know. All right, I got to look at it. Hold on. But no, I think the human centricity thing is, my PR person just sent me a text and said, yes, Kiss from a Lime. So that means something.
Okay, while you're reading it, everybody open up their phones and download the Snapchat app.
I don't know.
Check out promoted places.
I think it was she's just responding to an old test. So.
Well, anyway, maybe, you know what?
Even if we don't win, it was amazing.
We're going to win. Everybody's a winner.
No, but the human centricity thing is that, if consumers care, that's all that matters. Marketers outmarket themselves. They talk to each other. It's one of these things where if you lose focus on the consumer along your journey, it might be great work, but it's not impactful work. And I think this idea of human centricity, it's a very simple idea. Make sure at the core of everything you do, there's an insight. There's something that fundamentally relates to the average consumer. I think the other thing we're all guilty of is that we live in big cities. We come from different parts of the world. We all get to go to Cannes. We're not the average consumer. We are absolutely not the average consumer. The average consumer lives in small markets, has facing different challenges economically or otherwise. And so you've got to entertain. You've got to add value. You've got to give a reason for being. And human centricity at its core is just simply that. It's really ensure that whatever it is you're doing is relevant to the consumer, and however you build it starts with an insight. And I know we all talk about that. Everyone goes through, and you go through a brief, what's the insight? But I think we as an industry have to be more disciplined and more consistent. And I think the simpler the idea, the simpler the insight, the better it can be.
How has AI been impactful, or what's the most beneficial way of using AI, but yet still being able to keep that human centricity?
So look, we used AI a lot in what we did in the Seal spot. Most companies have been using AI for years, particularly in the back of house. Generative AI is it's an important tool, but anyone that saw the Apple presentation on day one knows that it is a tool. It's not a solution. It is not a replacement. And I'm not saying that because I'm defending the industry. I'm saying that because we've had many disruptors in technology throughout our careers and this industry. And if harnessing the power of AI makes our work better, then we win. And look, there was an ad that just recently ran, all created in 2 weeks. That is awesome. But that doesn't replace creativity. It enables creativity. So most companies use some algorithmic-based planning behind the scenes. We use AI in different ways, but you got to be smart with it. I think that, it's not a canned conversation unless the word AI comes up, right?
Absolutely.
And which is fine, but at some point, it's just going to be how we do things, how you use technology, just like how you use technology today. No one talks about mobile marketing anymore, or even mobile first. Like, if you're doing marketing, you have to make sure it lands on someone's phone in a more relevant way, right? So I do think the role of AI is to help make our work better, to help make our marketing smarter, but not to replace what we do. And also, we got to be careful, because there are a lot of concerns about the use of AI, and particularly with rights management. People's stuff is being screen scraped, being reused, and other than that, we've got to be super smart about it. Let it be an enabler, not a replacement. And if you can do that well, you can harness the power of technology for creativity.
I love that. And you're right. We did have to get AI in here one time just to
otherwise,
check the box. It didn't happen otherwise, right? So we talked about, the focusing on the person on the other side of your marketing campaigns. And a big piece of that is also being able to anticipate their needs and the changing consumer habits. And you guys have incredible legacy brands with, Mountain Dew, we talked about, Gatorade, but then you have also some new acquisitions like with Poppi. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance the two?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the one thing about PepsiCo, which is different than our competitors and most of our competitors, is that we are a true portfolio company. Like, Pepsi might be part of the name of the company, but it is not the only or main focus of our portfolio. It's a massive piece of our portfolio, but we've got a hell of a lot of other brands. We've got our snacks and foods group. We've got, obviously, Gatorade. We've got water, and now we have Poppi. And I think what you have to think about is, well, what role does each of those brands play for the company and for your portfolio? And I think what's great is that we now, with Poppi, have a product that addresses a different need. It's still a soda, or it's still a sparkling beverage, but what it does is it attracts the consumer to a new. In some ways, it's bringing consumers into the category in a new way, especially younger consumers. I mean, my own kids, the one product I had to continuously make sure they didn't bring in the house was Poppi. And now it's in my freezer. So it's one of these things where they tapped into something very authentically with a great product, and they built a great brand very quickly, and we're lucky to now be able to help them shepherd that. The most important thing, though, for us is not to, overdo it, to take over. I mean, one of the biggest things big companies do, we make acquisitions, and then we destroy what was so great about that product. I can tell you on my watch that won't happen, because Poppi is an incredible brand built by an amazing, husband-wife team, and a great group of people who have brought this authenticity to bring new consumers in. And there'll be something else. But when we look at the portfolio, every one of our brands plays a role. Those of you who grew up with Pepsi or Coke or whatever brand it was, you grew up with one side of the equation. But there are other people who grew up with sparkling water, or grew up with Poppi, or grew up with tea. And so we're lucky that we have coffee with Starbucks. We have Lipton with iced tea. We have Gatorade. We have water brands. But now we have something that's going to actually bring people back into sparkling and really accelerate our business in a new way.
I love it. Personally, I like the cherry limeade flavor. I don't know if that's a hit at your house. And the raspberry rose.
It is now, officially.
Yeah, right. Now it's allowed. But that's a big hit at my house. Can we also talk about what does simplicity mean when it comes to the consumer's path to purchase? It's a lot more complex nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'll put it in reference to, you got to start with how do consumers engage with brands, and how do consumers shop? How do they think about that path to purchase? I mean, the path to purchase used to be the funnel, right? You drive in awareness, you take some consideration, and then you close the deal. And the reality is, especially through technology, especially through mobile, especially through apps like Snapchat, what it allows you to do is create conversations. And this is why it's great that you're actually allowing us to come into those conversations in an authentic way.
Thank you. This is a perfect plug.
And I'm not saying, I'm saying that because I got kicked off of Snapchat by my kids. All right, I got an 18-year-old, 16-year-old, and they, for all the right reasons, I was on Snap, and when I would snap them, they would get angry. So I stopped. And the reality is that's their world. And if I want to engage their friends, their cohorts, I need to think differently about that path to purchase. That path to purchase could start in your pocket. It could start on your watch. It could start on that billboard. And I think the interesting thing is we as brands need to think differently. Like the path to purchase, one, isn't linear. Two, it's a mix of traditional and modern technology, modern marketing kind of channels. And ultimately, it's very personal. The world exists today that you have to think about how do you personalize your content. And if you can be relevant in platforms like Snap or platforms like TikTok or many others and find ways that you can actually drive that personal relevance, whether it's through an algorithm, whether it's through just relevant content, that's going to change the path to purchase. And I also think, the social commerce sphere, which is go to China, social commerce is a norm. People are shopping on WeChat like it's if you can't buy something on WeChat, that's like a massive, massive surprise. You think about most developed markets, we're not even doing that. And so if you think about the role that we can play to close the path to purchase within the existing ecosystems that many companies use or that you guys have, that is a huge unlock to engagement. And I think we're just scratching the surface.
It's funny, I feel like social commerce has been the other buzzword that we've been hearing all week this week. And we are a little bit behind the times versus the rest of the world. And also interesting, your story with your kids and Snap is the opposite of what we hear from a lot of people, where it's like the parents join because their kids get on it. And you're like, you were on it first. And they're like, okay, no, now this is our space. You're getting off. But the other thing when we were talking about maps, too, is that we actually heard a stat, I think it was Dave, you shared it yesterday, that our map is actually the second most used map behind Google Maps. So more used than the Apple Map on your phone. And the way that the consumers are using it is, yes, to make plans, to see what their friends are doing, or even to explore the different world around them. So thinking about, for you, using the chat to have a conversation, but then also connecting it to your customers and actually driving that off-channel experience. Good talking point for us after.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's amazing think about it as occasion-based marketing, right? This is, whether it's a map, whether it's, when people used to check in, like in Foursquare, and before then, and then being a function in Facebook, and then Facebook came out of fashion. Like, the reality is, it's occasion-based marketing. And if you have the ability to know where you and your friends are, and the one thing, like, my kids have been lucky, they lived all over the world, and like when they bring up their Snap maps, people are literally everywhere. And so every time we go somewhere, they will open up their Snap app and look at the map, and they will be surprised that one of their friends from another country happens to be there. Now, what's special about that is that that's fun for them. How do you make it fun for me as the marketer? And there's so many ways to do that. Like, how can we use this to turn our meals program into a great restaurant incentive? You're basically getting location-based messaging without actually having to have RFID tags and sensors and all the stuff we talked about 10 years ago at Cannes, right? The reality is it's already there. You have the opportunity through your platform, and other platforms can do it too, but we're not doing it. And I think this unlock that you guys have will actually change how we think about how we engage specifically this cohort in what generally would just call, occasion-based, ultimately location-based marketing. And that's the unlock. I mean, and what's really, really special, and this is where, like, again, marketers that we get in our way, they're already there. They're already having and snapping with their friends. They're already having conversations that are relevant to whatever moment you're trying to be relevant to. So I think we're at that kind of turning point where technology's caught up to behavior, and behavior's using technology in a way that is allowing brands to be super relevant in real time at the right point in time.
I love that. Last question, then I'm going to do a quick lightning round with you.
Awesome.
What advice would you give to marketers who are trying to simplify their approach?
It's hard. So first off, I'm not going to pretend that everything I do is simple. In fact, a lot of what I do is really complicated. It's a discipline like any other that you just have to do it and repeat it, and like going to the gym or whatever it is that is your thing. I think simplicity the very nature of it is hard. It's all about behavior and discipline and repeatability of whatever you do. And I think that's the one thing I will always focus my teams on, is just like, how do you prioritize the work? You know, there's always enough work. There's always going to be something at the end of the day. There's always going to be another project. But what really matters? And you have to look at it in kind of a matrix of how much effort does it take and what's the impact. So the first thing I do is like prioritize and simplify your life based on what has the biggest impact and like hopefully has the least amount of effort. That's nirvana, right? I think the other thing is your own time. Especially we all have busy lives and busy careers, but I think the reality is prioritizing your time. I do an annoying color coding schedule, and I was the last person I thought would ever do that. It's not because I'm like a control freak or anything like that, but what I think is special about it is it allows me to visually look at my calendar and in 2 seconds kind of sort of know what I'm going on. And just that is a very simple act that if you repeat and do, it becomes a behavior. And I think those are the things I'd say, to keep your life simple, really focus on what matters, figure out what's got the most amount of effort versus what's going to have the most impact, and then use simple tools in life that allow you to prioritize, whether it's your calendar, time with your family, spending time to learn. I think we don't spend enough time to learn, which is why this week is so important for so many of us. Is like, I get to actually do marketing for a week. It's awesome. I get to spend time having conversation about creativity, not worried about budgets and all the fun stuff we all get to do. So I think it is about that prioritization and simplification.
I love it. I'm definitely going to try that color coding, because just a quick glance at your calendar and trying to understand what you have
it's
on the docket today. Okay, lightning round.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Share a Pepsi with...
My kids.
Pizza for me. Your favorite Poppy flavor is?
This is a tough one. I'm actually going to say, and I've told the Poppy team this, it's actually their cherry cola flavor, which does not taste like cola. It's not a cola, and I know a little bit about cola, but it's an amazing product. It literally tastes like a Bing cherry soda.
Ooh, I'm going to have to check that
It's
one out.
really good.
I have not seen that one yet. The most exciting thing about AI is?
That's a tough one. I think the most exciting thing about AI is that people are now talking. Like, you go back 2 years ago, it was scary, and then last year it was like, oh wow, it's going to kill the industry, and now this year it's like, oh wow, it's actually making the work better. So I think AI is now. I think the most exciting thing is it's less scary and potentially more powerful to kind of make creativity better.
Oh, I love that. Favorite Seal song? I'll give you some teasers if you need some leads here.
That's hard. I mean, everyone will say Kiss from Rose, which, by the way, was a failure when it first came out. If it hadn't been in the Batman movie, you may not know Seal's name. Like, it's Bring It On is another one of his great songs.
Okay. I like Crazy.
Crazy is amazing. What's amazing is that most of his amazing hits are like 20, 30 years old, but he's still killing it at 62 years old. So... actually, I'm going to go with Crazy because that's actually really
good. All right,
good.
nice. Okay, this is the last one, and it is true or false. 2026 is the year that Crystal Pepsi returns.
Why does the world
Crystal
care
Pepsi.
so much about Crystal Pepsi?
I loved Crystal Pepsi.
I'm going to give you a really straightforward maybe.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping.
Just so that someone
can
write that I said it was coming out, and then people will but... What I love, here's the important thing about that. I'm gonna riff off of that for a second. Is that the fact that we're having this conversation means that our brands have a role in culture, and whether I relaunch Crystal Pepsi or do something else, the fact that people are talking about brands and products that were launched 20 years ago is awesome. I relaunched last year a product we called Pepsi Electric. It's basically the same blue Pepsi we lost a long time ago. We changed form a little bit, but it just creates news. It creates conversation. So. It's a big maybe. You never know. You never know.
That's right. Well, Mark, thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Appreciate everybody for coming today.